Hope you're enjoying the weather where you are. It's very sunny here in Cornwall. I'm at the Connected Places Catapult London office for the second time since lockdown began. It's very exciting. I'm sure some of you are starting to go back to offices as well. I don't know, I think that's probably enough background jingle, isn't it? Very good. Okay, well, let's make a start. So great to have you here. Welcome to Third Thursday from the Connected Places Catapult on this topic of lessons in levelling up from Belfast and beyond. We've got some fantastic speakers and there's been lots of time for Q&A. So do please get your questions ready. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these things now, but there's a Q&A function at the bottom. Post your questions throughout the session. That will be very welcome. We'll get to them at the end. So if I can ask my colleagues to move on to the next slide, we'll get started. So my name's Sam Markey. It's good to meet you. I'm the Director of Strategic Analysis here at the Catapult. Onwards again, please. I'm going to just say a couple of words about the Catapult. Many of you hopefully have come across us before, will have been listening to our podcast, come to previous events, but we know that there's always new people arriving. And so just by way of background, at the Catapult, we harness UK innovation to help create connected places for a productive, greener future. We're really, really interested and passionate about this issue of levelling up that we're talking about today, and what's the role of technology in enabling that. We're really, really keen on driving the net zero place agenda. And so we're actively involved in that. And of course, we're also living through this moment of post-pandemic transition and recovery. So that's something that we are deeply involved in. On again, please, Leanne, thank you. So we do three main things. We connect, we help places and their partners respond to their immediate situations, connecting them to pioneering practice and the available solutions so they can create the conditions for future success. Onwards, we spark innovation, bringing UK research institutions, businesses and place leaders together to develop the step change solutions which will allow places to build back better. And thirdly, we accelerate innovative solutions to scale both at home in the UK and abroad, delivering growth for UK PLC and a greener future for all. So that's a bit about us. Hopefully that provides a bit of context. There's lots more on our website if you want to know more. Go on to the next slide, please. So as I say, we've got the great speakers. We've got Deborah from Belfast. I've been proud to be involved with the work that we've been doing in Belfast and the work that Deborah's been doing over several years to establish a new innovation economy there. And I saw recently they were featured in a review of innovation clusters, and us performing really highly on lots of the indicators for an innovation economy. So we're going to hear a bit about the journey they've been on in that region. And Jessie Hampshire from Cornwall, again, really exciting, a very different sort of journey that county has been on working with its partners. So we're going to insights on how they've gone about creating innovation and stimulating public investment in that part of the world. So lots to learn. On to the next slide, please. So this is kind of the running order. This is what you can expect over the next 55 minutes. But I'm going to start with a poll. So if my colleagues on the magic dials can put the first poll up, that would be fantastic. So I'm guessing you're here because you are interested in levelling up. There's something about the way we stimulate and cultivate our local and regional economies that you think is important. What does levelling up success look like to you? Tell us now. I've got a couple of moments. Tell us what you think levelling up success looks like. Is it about jobs? Is it high-paid jobs? Is it productivity? Is it about economic output? Or is it something else? Another 28 seconds. Excellent. Okay, so there's a strong lean towards more economic output. 37% of you think more economic output, and 32% think something else. So that's really interesting. Please tell me in the chat or the comments what you think that something else is. What is it that you will evaluate success in levelling up by? That's really interesting. So the second poll I'm going to put up for that now, please, which is what are the barriers? So obviously, depending on what you're measuring, you may think there are different barriers, but what are the barriers that you think exist to levelling up? What is it that needs tackling? Is it about skills? Is it about connectivity? Is it about the sort of broader quality of life of a region? Is it about lack of investment? Is it about leadership? What do you think? I'm sure, again, there'll be other things here. We've just taken a sort of a choice sample of the things that the research seems to suggest. Takes another 5 seconds to throw your hat in the ring on whichever you think is most important. Oh, we've got a tie. Let's go on. Someone place one more vote. Okay, I think we're tied there on lack of investment and leadership. Well, that's really interesting, because this session is really all about both of those things. It's about the leadership and creating the story and the narrative which transforms the destiny of our places, our towns, cities, counties, regions. And how we use that leadership and that narrative to stimulate public and private investment. And both of the places we're looking at today are great examples of doing that successfully. So hopefully there'll be lots for you to learn. Excellent. Well, on that note, I think I will hand over to Deborah, who's going to speak first. She's going to share a bit about the journey that Belfast has been on, and the role that innovation and technology has played in stimulating and releasing new economic prosperity in her part of the world. So Deborah, over to you.
Hello, and thank you for that, Sam, and thank you for inviting me on to speak to you today about some of the things that are happening in Belfast. As Sam said, I'm the City Innovation Manager with the Innovation Office in Belfast City Council, and also lead the Smart Belfast programme. I'm going to talk to you about, I suppose, how we've been shaping our city deal, and in particular the digital innovation investments as part of that, and how we see that links to the levelling up agenda. So I'll say a wee bit about my limited knowledge of what levelling up is all about, talk a bit about Belfast's overarching strategy for digital innovation and how we think that can contribute. And I'll outline some of the planned City Deal investments and projects as well. And then I'll just finish with some reflections on what we've learnt to date. But before I begin, I would note that our approach has really emerged from Belfast City Council's commitment to driving a smart cities agenda. And really, I suppose, to also acknowledge the fact that we worked very closely with our colleagues in the now connected Places Catapult to develop that agenda and develop our smart cities roadmap. I can see, if we move on to the next slide there, and we can see they're just some of the projects that we have delivered over the past 2 years. So it's a very short life that we've had our Smart Belfast, but we've had some real good, a track record of success. Not massive amounts of money, but things like we've been able to attract $1 million from the Rockefeller 100 Resilient Cities, and we now have a Commissioner for Resilience in place. We're looking at how we can use technology in our parks and open spaces and encourage safer use of open spaces across the city. We're looking at last mile delivery. We're looking at our maritime mile and how we can use the assets and bring assets to life and street furniture to life. And a whole range of other projects and programs, some of them quite strategic and some of them not so strategic, but focusing very much on some of our challenges that we have in the city. But it's safe to say that the Smart Belfast approach has really transformed the thinking of our partners in the city. Just go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so Sam has asked me to mention the links of what we're doing and the levelling up agenda. And of course, levelling up refers to a whole wide range of areas in our society that need to be focused on. But just to draw out a few points that we're particularly interested in. So first thing to say is Centre for Cities report notes that almost every mid-sized UK city is underperforming by comparison to peers elsewhere in Europe. And it notes that there is a potential for cities across the UK in this category to be contributing an additional £47 billion per year to national GDP. So this is important for us in Northern Ireland as we have ambitious plans to harness innovation to massively increase the region's productivity. Belfast, of course, is one of those cities, and the Centre for Cities makes a series of suggestions, as you can see there, for how cities can be supported to level up. At a high level, you can see there around the devolution of funding and decision making, and an emphasis on skills and infrastructure improvements. And that's, of course, where we're really focused with our Belfast Region City Deal. And the UK government has put our research and innovation at the heart of the industrial strategy, with ambitions to become the most innovative country in the world and to increase its focus on R&D investment from 1.69% to 2.4% of GDP by 2027. And this, of course, is really important because R&D leads to innovation, and innovation creates productive industries and well-paid jobs. And just to add that a recent Nesta report, the missing 4 billion, making R&D work for the whole UK, highlights reasons for this economic imbalance and provides estimates of the investment required for levelling up across the UK. And of course, we're looking very closely at what this means for Northern Ireland. So on the next slide, we can see here that we have a mixed context for Belfast. We have some serious strengths, and in terms of economic recovery, we have a really good success story over the past decade. But we also have some systematic challenges, and they probably reflect the experience of many other places in the UK. For example, we have issues of persistent economic inactivity. Nearly 30% of our working age population is inactive, and this has been the story for a generation. And at the level of the economy in general, the region has had ongoing problems with productivity. And whilst Belfast as a city performer performs better than the rest of the region, it remains the case that we are punching below our weight. We need to address our problems, growing businesses to sufficient scale. And we also need to be able to adapt innovative processes and ways of doing things. But on the plus side, our city has a lot to shout about and a lot to build on. One of the major success stories of the last decade has been our knowledge economy. Strengths in fintech, cybersecurity, health tech, and core data science. Our knowledge economy consistently outperforms the rest of the economy in terms of growth, FDI, and productivity. And for the 5th year running, we've been the fastest growing sector in the UK. We've also got high levels of educational attainment. We have world-class research in our 2 fantastic universities, in particular in core data science, in robotics and AI, and in health sciences. And we now have significant planned spend, public sector and private sector spend and investment in the city, £3 billion over the next 8 years. So with this wealth of innovative SMEs, large companies and centres of excellence, we're really confident we have the foundation for future success. So that we see this as the starting point for our levelling up. So on the next slide, this outlines, I suppose, a high level summary, and sorry it's a bit busy, of the digital innovation ambition that we have, not just for Belfast, but of course, anything that we do in Belfast, we hope will also help to drive the whole of Northern Ireland. And over the past year, our key institutions, our universities, our private sector, Invest NI, Belfast City Council and industry reps have been working together to design a single ambition for our economy going forward. And it's based on the premise that digital innovation can play a major role in addressing a number of systemic issues associated with levelling up and the wider productivity challenge. And at the heart of the approach is that innovation is our main catalyst for transformation, and that digital innovation in particular is extremely powerful. Our approach is to build on existing research excellence, to defend our existing cluster strengths, and to stimulate new clusters where we believe that Belfast has clear opportunities. And these, of course, are mainly in fintech, cybersecurity, and core computer science or data science. At the same time, we believe that we can harness this approach to address urban challenges in innovative ways. And we're using Mariana Mazzucato's approach to mission-oriented strategies to define a number of major challenges in the city. And we're going to use these to spur our digital innovation by our universities and our growth sectors. And the three missions there that you can see at the top of that dome is the focus of health and well-being for our citizens, artificial intelligence and IoT, and also sustainable and resilience goals. So what we want to do is drive programs and investments cross-sector that are going to feed directly into those challenges. And beneath that, we are developing our targets. So there will be smart targets oriented, looking very much at delivery and at impact. And of course, the Belfast Region City Deal is focused very much on these three areas. It's a £1 billion package, and it has a number of pillars, but I'm going to mainly now focus very quickly on the digital innovation pillar. So the next slide there, the main stimulus for this ambition is, as I've said, the Belfast Region City Deal. And the package covers several pillars, as you can see: digital innovation, boosting tourism, infrastructure, employability and skills. 6 local authorities in the Belfast region have come together to put together this £1 billion package. And the investment comes from central government, UK government, the 6 local authorities, our universities, and the private sector. On to the next slide, please. Just to give you a very brief overview of the key areas then, the digital innovation pillar, it's in 2 parts. And first of all, we are investing £200 million in 5 new university centres of excellence. So these are building on the existing research strengths of the 2 local institutions. So they include an AI centre for innovation, a centre for 2 centres for health technologies and clinical trials, an advanced manufacturing centre, and looking at the adoption of Industry 4.0, and a centre for next generation media. And underpinning this investment in our research strengths, we're also then investing 130 million in the enabling environment for digital innovation. So we see two strands here. We see the environment that we will invest in to be able to trial and test and deploy technology and new innovative solutions. And at the same time, we're going to try and spur on innovation activity with a significant challenge fund. So the Smart District, if I start with that, is a 5G enabled smart district, a distributed network of regional innovation as well, so reaching out to across the region to the other 5 parts of the deal. Really trying to bring the trials, the results, the new products, the new standards, the new protocols that are maybe developed in the Smart District, and bringing them right out across the region, and really trying to bring cutting edge technology to the region as well. The Smart District itself, we see it as an urban sandbox, a place that will have a low barrier to entry for businesses who want to test out new products and services. And it will have a whole range of technologies right up to 5G, so coming down 4G LTE, 4G, 3G, and so on, and IoT networks as well, and all of the different platforms and tools you need to run that environment and to support things like edge computing and so on. And the idea is that we will be addressing the TRL levels 6 to 9. So getting some of these new products and services out from the indoor lab into the outdoor lab, and basically trying to look at how would these technologies work in a real life situation, and then allowing public sector to be able to develop the policies around these technologies so that we can also move on to adoption and scale up as well. The Enabling Infrastructure Fund is again how we are going to look at supporting these trials and test beds. So we will have 3 lighthouse projects, one focused very much on the energy economy and looking at how we can use hydrogen to support sustainable movement of goods and people. And we will be putting in place a lighthouse project focused on smart, healthy neighbourhood. And again, this will be the digital enabling infrastructure to be able to do that. And the third one is focusing very much on smart transport as well. The Innovators Network at the bottom there that I've mentioned is really how we can scale a lot of this out around the region, and how the region can tap in to some of the things that are happening in the city. And we can also work on joint test beds as well. So it's not just about city test beds, it's also about rural test beds, and through the Smart District, being able to capture a lot of that learning and then disseminate it around the region. Data, bottom right hand corner there, is really important, and this is where we want to also put in place a citizen office for data analytics, and this is about how we bring the citizens into defining the challenges, developing and delivering on the challenges, and how they can be part of developing a trusted model where their data can be shared for a lot of the testing purposes. And the Innovation Challenge Fund itself. So we're saying that, okay, we don't want just to build it and expect them to come. We want to drive that innovation activity. So we have 65 million that we're looking to ring fence for a whole range of SBRI style programs, loans, grants, equity investments, and how this differs from the normal programs that we have coming out from the UK is they're very focused on the key challenges that we have and that we will develop. They're very focused on the 3 grant missions now that we're setting in place, and we will also be looking at how we help to commercialise ideas and how we help to scale those up around the city and the region. And of course, we will have our digital innovation platform partnership, and this is really the glue that will hold it together, that will run the challenges, that will disseminate the shared learning, that will help businesses to tap into areas of expertise, and will create collaborative opportunities for private sector, public sector, and academia to work together. Okay, if we want to just go on to the slide 8, which is really my last slide. Okay, so our ambition really is to carefully shape the city deal, to defend what we have, to build on those areas that we see have the greatest potential. And the knowledge economy, I suppose, for us is key to this approach, and fostering the right mix of ingredients is critical to this success. So just some thoughts then on what we've been doing to date and some reflections. One area that we have been thinking about carefully is the wider impact on society, because there is a real danger that the approach that we take could actually contribute to widening the inequalities rather than addressing them. So this is, and we know this is something that a number of places in the US, for example, have been experiencing. So our focus is also on the skills agenda, and that will run from raising awareness of the data-driven technologies that impact our lives, right through to offer on-ramps to more formalised education and training. And we're placing a lot of emphasis on working with a grassroots level innovator network, if you like, to harness the spirit of the makerspace idea. We're also seeking to closely involve the participating investors and SMEs in an inclusive growth agenda. So we aim to build an approach that will deliver societal impact agreements with the private sector supporting the reskilling through apprenticeships and so on. And we're also looking, as I said, to develop our citizen-driven office for data analytics. And again, that will be very focused on grassroots capability building, co-design and delivery. So for an example, an early project that we see will be working with cohorts of citizens on connected health projects. So the success of this project will be dependent on the active, informed participation of citizens. So we see the Office for Data Analytics as being one key way of building that capability. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind tour, starting from levelling up through to our city deal projects at a very high level. I hope it's shed a wee bit of light on some of the things that we're doing. And we have developed a partnership for the city. And so again, I'm sure everyone will tell you that any program, any vision needs to have serious leadership. So we have you know, the chief executive of our own council, we have the VCs of the universities, chief executive of the port, the head of Invest NI and private and industry representation, who have come together now to really, as a city, have a joint voice and a joint ambition going forward to try and I suppose, support innovation and really see how we can transform not just our economy, but how we deliver our public services. So happy to take any questions or whatever way you want to take it next, Sam.
Fantastic. Thank you, Deborah. An excellent summary of what you've been doing. And it's really inspiring, as you say. It's not been a long road you've walked so far, but you've accomplished so much, and we've been thrilled to be part of that as the Catapult. You mentioned 3 things that people might want to come back and ask questions about in the Q&A function. You talked about the need to understand assets and analyse the strengths. I think, you know, we were reflecting in previous conversations that there were unknown strengths and assets in the region which were not being fully used. You talked about aligning the ecosystem and having leadership and that convening role of bringing people together around a shared story. And you talked about enabling infrastructure and the need to, you know, the modelling and the analysis, which looks at what will it cost and what will the return be. And I really love the line you said about creating on-ramps for new opportunity. And I think that's really important as we all think about levelling up our own areas. We need to make sure that we are helping people get up to speed and join that fast lane and not feel left behind. So as I say, thank you for speaking. We'll come back for questions at the end. Please do, those who are watching, please do share your questions. I'm going to come over to Jessie now. So Jessie is Director of Strategy Engagement at Cornwall City Council, and she and I had a really fascinating conversation last summer or earlier about what does a connected place look like when you're a massively distributed rural area, and you know what's the Catapult's offer for that kind of place. And it's been a question that I've been really wrestling with and exploring and reading the work that's come out of Cornwall. So I'm thrilled that Jessie's here to share a bit about what they've been doing to tell their own story and to stimulate innovation. So Jessie, again, tell us about what's happening in Cornwall and what the lessons are for others.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. Delighted to be here. I noticed in the chat bar when there was that kind of conversation about what is levelling up. Big shout out to Sean, who said it's about eradicating regional inequalities. And really that's what Cornwall has grappled with for several decades now as one of the poorest regions of Europe. We know the UK has the biggest regional disparities in the OECD. And we know that COVID has thrown those into even starker relief because it hasn't impacted everywhere the same, with rural and coastal areas like Cornwall among the worst affected. And we also know that all the academic studies on regional exposure to the economic risks from EU exit suggest those inequalities will be further amplified in January. So it just feels a really timely moment to be focused on the role of innovation in levelling up. Could you move on, Leanne, please? Thank you. And so this is just a little pen picture of some of Cornwall's challenges and opportunities. You can think of Cornwall perhaps best as an exploded city, with all the parts the city's got just dispersed across a large and rather beautiful geography. And that does make connectivity a key challenge. Yet parts of Cornwall are now more tech ready than Greater Manchester. And the pandemic has shown we can connect and work anywhere from any place. I'd argue Cornwall's quite hard to beat as a place to base yourself. Another challenge, over 98% of our 24,000 businesses are small or micro. Micros employ over 30% of total jobs. R&D spend is just 0.39%, less than a quarter of the UK average. Set against that, our small and micro businesses are more active in the innovation space than elsewhere. And our R&D spend has almost doubled while the national average has stagnated. Again, thinking of challenges, we have lots of people in Cornwall who are employed in low productivity, low wage businesses and sectors. Over 15% of our total employment is in the foundational economy in health and social care. And of course, COVID-19 for us has rather ruthlessly exposed the lack of resilience of having 31% of your private sector jobs depending on the visitor economy. And yet again, set against that, we have some really strong knowledge assets in renewable and marine technologies, georesources, agri-tech, space and satellite, and in creative and digital. And I would say critically, we also have really strong local leadership, which is proactively using public investment to de-risk growth and to create the enabling conditions for innovation. Thank you, Leanne. So this next slide illustrates just a few of the key points on our journey. It starts in 1999 with securing Objective 1 status, which is not really the prize, but of being one of the poorest regions in Europe. That was the culmination of a long campaign for Cornwall to be recognised as a region in its own right, because previously we were looked at as part of the wider Southwest, and our economic challenges were masked and hidden. This is what unlocked around £60 million a year of EU investment over 2 decades in levelling up. Pretty much all of the other milestones that you can see on this journey would not have been achieved without this. The Cornwall I grew up in had no university, no innovation centres, no commercial airport, no dual carriageways. It certainly didn't have a spaceport. Another point I draw your attention to just on this journey is the creation of the Unitary Council in 2010 and our 2015 devolution deal, which was a rural first and really helped accelerate our journey. 7 councils into one radically simplified our public sector landscape. And while having sea on 3 sides limits our ability to lean on neighbours for support, it also means we enjoy contiguous boundaries with our LEP and other partners. And our devolution deal gave us much more local control over a range of functions, including EU funding, so that we could start to match that better to local economic growth priorities. So I'll just run through a few case studies to help illustrate this. Next slide, please, Leanne. First of all, looking at innovation in our fast-growing creative sector, which has achieved turnover growth of 95% between 2001 and 2017. EU investment enabled Falmouth University to grow from a historic school of art into a modern digital innovation hub, which in 2014-15 generated £1 in every £155 of economic output in Cornwall. Launchpad is its postgraduate incubation and acceleration programme, which creates new digital businesses to meet identified market demand in just 12 months. The example you can see here is Codices, which works with brands and influencers to create live interactive shows on the streaming platform Twitch, and has just secured £250,000 equity investment from the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Investment Fund. And Cornwall Council holds a 5% stake in that business as part of our investment into Launchpad. The Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Investment Fund itself was set up with the British Business Bank, thanks to our devolution deal, using European funds to transform the finance landscape for smaller businesses in our area. So this is a kind of illustration of how we've tried to create a real ecosystem for innovation startup and scale up. Next slide, please. The next case study is in clean energy. So our innovative Newquay-based company Benjamin has been testing a patent-pending engineering method to turn farm waste like cow manure and grass cuttings into zero carbon fuel. A 1.58 million council-funded trial is now piloting production on 6 of our council-owned farms, and we're using that fuel to decarbonise the council's fleet of road maintenance trucks, a real circular economy approach. If successful, production could be scaled up to hundreds of small-scale farms across Cornwall, helping the farmers diversify their income, helping residents save on bills in an area with high fuel poverty, and helping Cornwall achieve net carbon zero by 2030. It's the small scale of gas collection directly on the farm, capturing carbon emissions that would otherwise vent into the climate, which is the real innovation here, and makes this a genuinely zero carbon fuel, unlike other methods you may have come across of growing energy crops specifically to feed an industrial scale anaerobic digestion plant. And it's a great example of a really small, innovative, market disrupting company in it taking an ethical approach here. So next slide. This case study, renewable energy, the race to zero. Cornwall's really leading innovation in renewable energy to power the future decarbonised economy. As part of this, we're pioneering techniques to unlock energy from hot rocks deep underground. The deepest and hottest geothermal energy well ever drilled in Britain has recently been completed at United Downs in Cornwall. It goes 3.1 miles underground, where temperatures reach 195 degrees Celsius, and 27 universities were involved in the project during the drilling phase. Alongside deep geothermal, Cornwall is, for instance, pioneering marine and floating offshore wind technologies. Our council-owned Wave Hub is the world's largest and most technologically advanced offshore renewable energy testing facility. The Celtic Sea will be one of 2 leading regions for the UK's ambitions in floating offshore wind, the other Scotland, and has potential for up to 3,200 jobs by 2030 and an extra 682 million spend in the local supply chain, which will itself support more innovative business growth. So next slide, please. And this one was one I added at the last minute. This is hot off the press and shows how the council's investment in deep geothermal is unlocking further innovation. So Cornish Lithium is an innovative mineral company which is exploring for lithium and other battery metals. The company announced today that an R&D pilot has found there are indeed globally significant lithium grades in the geothermal waters in our 3-mile deep well that we drilled at United Downs. These initial results indicate some of the world's highest grades of lithium and best overall chemical qualities for geothermal waters anywhere in the world, which makes it perfect for innovative direct lithium extraction technology, which basically extracts dissolved lithium compounds from the water without the need for large evaporation ponds, which are used in the arid regions of South America. So a £4 million project is now going to trial production from geothermal waters, which are rapidly becoming recognised as the ultimate ethical source of lithium, and bring us a step closer to commercialisation. And hopefully Elon Musk is picking up the news today. So those are just a few case studies, really are about, as Sam, you summarised from Deborah's presentation, about building on assets and strengths. Start with what's strong, not what's wrong. And I'll just go on to the next slide, which has a few lessons that I would draw from Cornwall's experience in using innovation to level up. So first of all, it's really important to focus on the right spatial geography. As I said, Cornwall's place challenges were masked and hidden as part of the wider Southwest until that long campaign secured EU recognition as a region in our own right. And when we look at Innovate UK funding, for instance, while the Southwest as a whole receives a relatively proportionate share, this is concentrated in the west of England and Gloucestershire. And we need to look at NUTS 2 levels to see the stark regional disparities in our current innovation funding arrangements. The share of Innovate UK funding coming to Cornwall is around 1/5 of what we would expect if it were based on our share of the national business population. Second lesson, you've got to commit to a long-term programme of investment in levelling up. This is essential to de-risk and create the conditions for steady incremental growth in innovation, GVA and wages. We've yet to see if the approach the EU has taken will be replicated. Promises have been made, shared prosperity fund consultations still awaited. Thirdly, giving local power and control to proactive place leaders might feel really, really hard for one of the most centralised economies in the world, but it's really important. Equipping our unitary council and partners with more control over the EU investment, as well as a host of other powers through our devolution deal, has been critical to enable us to fund local economic growth priorities like deep geothermal, which simply would not have been prioritised within a national framework. And then final lesson I draw out for you is about parity of consideration for dispersed economies. In the digital age, with the right infrastructure, everywhere can be a connected place. This is the point I was kind of making to Sam last summer. EU regional development funding has always focused on levelling up because they made it a legal requirement. By contrast, UK domestic funds have focused on city-centric growth and trickle-down policies, which arguable whether they've worked. And this will need to change if we are to level up and unleash the innovation potential of our periphery to support the digitised, decentralised, decarbonised modern economy. And just to illustrate that last point, on the next slide, you can see the map on the left from last year's CBI report, which shows that 3 regions account for 52% of R&D spend in this country. And on the right is analysis carried out for Britain's Leading Edge, which reveals this city-centric policy corridor running through the middle of the country, where historically the bulk of UK domestic funding in growth, innovation, infrastructure and devolution has been invested. And the mantra of levelling up must lead to real change in this picture if we're going to harness innovation as a lever for rebalancing those regional inequalities in wealth. So thank you, Sam. Hopefully I've done that fast enough to leave plenty of time for Q&A.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Really inspiring. And the only, well, not the only, I'm sure, but one of the few regions that has been investing in space tech and long-range deep space arrays, which I think is amazing and exciting itself. So thank you for sharing all of that. I'm sure people will have questions. There have been some questions coming in. Deborah, if you want to turn your camera back on, and we'll stop sharing the slides for a few minutes so we can see everyone's faces more easily. There's a question about from Sally about how Belfast ensure that stakeholders in the innovation partnership are collaborating, and the kind of the challenges with bringing people together who have traditionally had competing interests, who have been concerned about sharing and showing collective endeavour. I wonder if you want to reflect a bit on what it took to bring to create that kind of consensus, which has led to such strong shared story and shared investment.
Yes, I mean, obviously one of the key things in this whole journey has been bringing people with us. And the first thing was, of course, 6 councils coming together, as well as then bringing in our private sector and bringing in academia. So our 2 universities are very involved in the Belfast Region City Deal. As I mentioned earlier, we have 5 centres of excellence as part of this whole ecosystem. And I think I suppose the key thing for us is the shared ambition and trying to work out what are those key things that we're trying to achieve together. The City Deal itself does have its own targets and metrics. So it's about GVA, it's about productivity, it's about driving jobs, and it's about more and better jobs. So obviously that is something that has galvanized the whole of the region. But I think at the heart of it, that everyone recognised the fact that innovation and digital innovation in particular is something that is needed to radically change and transform what we do, how we do things. And the 2 sides that everyone agreed was, first of all, there's an economic drive here. So it's how do we develop new markets, how do we stimulate the economy and play to the strengths across the region. And that's one of the things that's inherent in our particular programme, because it's about playing to the strengths across the region. And then the other side of it is about societal outcomes. So we all agreed we want to live longer, we want to live healthier, and we have to adopt the sustainability goals, and we have to really start looking at how we can adopt technology to do that. So I think agreeing the outcomes, agreeing what we're trying to achieve without getting into the nitty-gritty of the projects was something that really was the start and really fired off the enthusiasm and the ambition of everyone. And then once you can agree what it is you're trying to achieve, then everything starts to fall into place. And of course, a lot of hard work in doing all of that as well. And I must say, we also put in place, or the partners, the City Deal partners, put in place a programme office. And they appointed a programme director, they appointed someone who had good experience with business cases, green business case development, and, you know, a skills person, and you know, a whole range of expertise as well. And so whilst people like me are really just into the technology and trying to drive Smart Belfast, you have these experts in the core programme office that help to sort of coordinate and pull all of this together, and that dedicated team was important as well in the outreach part of all of this.
That's really helpful, yeah. So taking it seriously and investing in building a shared story before people start sharing their own crown jewels, so that they give a sense that they're able to contribute to something where they'll get a return and they're signed up. It's a really useful insight. Jesse, I want to ask you, there's another question here that, so you touched on the fact that, you know, we all now know that we can work anywhere, more or less. I happen to be back in the office, as I was saying at the beginning, but that's this is unusual, and it will be for many of us. For parts of the country that have traditionally hemorrhaged talent and have had young people get up and move away, this feels like a really important opportunity to tell a different story about what the local offer is, and through the kind of connectivity that you've invested in, you know, to retain and build on that. I wonder if you want to reflect on how places that perhaps have a similar position to Cornwall, but perhaps a few steps back, you know, what sort of things did you need to do to create the conditions where people wanted to stay?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Sam, and I saw Jules speculating in the chat that it might be a bigger issue for dispersed economies than exploded cities, whatever you call them. So it really has been for us, and we used a lot of that EU investment to create those conditions. So we invested in the Superfast Cornwall programme, which is has rolled out superfast broadband to pretty much, I mean, we've got a few really remote bits, but pretty much every premise in Cornwall, and in that kind of road, airport, all the other infrastructure. Our devolution deal, we've used that to create a rural first one public transport system, a bit like Transport for London in a rural area, full integration across bus, rail, plane and boat, because we have the Isles of Scilly. So I think it's absolutely foundational. And you know, what we are absolutely seeing, you're right about that. We talk about wanting to fatten our waistline of our demographics, because we do have people leave for jobs. We have lots of people retire down here, aging, forefront of the grand challenge of an aging society here in Cornwall. So it's really key, and I do think that the last century has been about physical agglomerations and presence in city offices. That there is, you know, for millennial lifestyle, a lot of benefit of being in Cornwall, and that investment that we've made into the digital infrastructure does make it an ideal place to relocate. And you know, look, we're the really proactive council and public sector looking to make that easier for businesses that want to do it. So yeah, Jules is spot on there. Really important for rural areas, and the nation, actually, because us all concentrating in cities isn't a sustainable long-term solution with a growing population, is it?
So I think that's really interesting. And there was an excellent speaker at last year's World Built Environment Forum, a guy called Parag Khanna, who's got TED Talk. If you haven't seen, look it out. But he talks about this idea that connectivity is destiny, which is a bit sort of grandiose, but it's exactly the point you make. It doesn't need to be roads, it doesn't need to be rail, but the way in which places connect can transform the opportunities. Yeah, they can't move, can't change lots of your geography, but you can connect into other parts of the economy, near and far. So yeah, it's been really exciting to see how Cornwall has done that. Deborah, you talked a bit about the investment that you attracted from both the City Deal, but also from institutional partners and corporate citizens, so large industrial partners in the city. I wonder if you wanted to reflect a bit on how you brought them in. You know, what was it that that encouraged some of your big local industries to chip into this shared deal, this vision?
Well, I suppose very very much linked to what I said in the previous question. You know, it was trying to really show the potential of the city deal and the opportunity to get our hands on some significant money to do, you know, something that was transformational for the city. And we worked very closely with the Belfast Harbour, and again, colleagues like Nicola Yates there and Aaron and other colleagues there in the Catapult. We're very involved in conversations with our harbour, who have significant plans and significant investment planned over the next 10 years. And they have come on board, really liked the smart district idea and liked the idea of a smart port. And again, you know, we've been in tandem developing our strategies. The universities obviously were key to all of this, and you know, they really have their agenda now is really about impact. And I suppose what we were doing was providing a way in which they could bring their research and development into impact. Most of what they do is in the indoor lab, and we're saying, well, you know, we can provide a smart district to test and trial this, and these technologies, bring them up the TRL levels, and before we can, you know, scale up and deploy in the city. And then, of course, you know, private sector and property developers, they really see that here's an opportunity to attract people to come to their properties, and especially businesses who to be part of an ecosystem. You know, Grade A office space is great, and we've got lots of positive reasons why you would come and live and set up your business in Belfast. But, you know, the idea that you could be part of an ecosystem, and, you know, where the city understands the importance of data, and where we're building trust with our citizens, where we have, you know, an approach where we want to be open with our data, that we want to be open with, you know, with our businesses as well, to bring them in, to help them to, I suppose, provide solutions to some of our problems. And also for us to be open in relation to what are the problems we have in Belfast, in the region, or in Northern Ireland. So I think there was a bit of a mixture of all of this, of trying to talk about the things that we wanted to achieve, all of the benefits of working together and collaborating, and also speaking to their particular agendas as well.
Fantastic. So there's two questions here that I think we'll use to kind of draw things to a close, and I'm going to pose them to both of you. I'm going to mash two questions together. So local authorities are always wrestling with 1,000 challenges, budget pressures, and rising demand. And now we've got the pandemic thrown into the mix, which has added even more complexity. I wonder whether both of you might want to reflect for a moment on how place leaders like yourselves have been able to cut through and help senior leadership take some of these bold decisions. You know, not that our leaders aren't capable; they definitely are. These examples are both down to leadership, but somewhere that spark began, and some you know, some big choices were made. So how might other places try and cut through the noise of the myriad of things that you're doing? And relatedly, or perhaps alternatively, is there anything that you're prioritizing differently because of the pandemic in your plans for levelling up and, you know, and regional reinvention? So Jessie, do you want to go first on either or both of those?
Yeah, thank you. I feel really ill-equipped to answer Sean's question about what changed, because I joined Cornwall Council 3.5 years ago, and it's always kind of had this kind of focus and culture and drive. But I do think in a former life, I invented business rates retention, and I do think there's something around kind of the incentive systems that are perhaps built into the broader framework for local government that have helped it to be really focused on the broad economic growth picture, not just delivery of public services, and that place leadership picture. I would say it's part of our journey of unitarisation to take that more strategic view across the whole area. And I suppose really political leadership and senior leadership has been there. It hasn't felt like something I've had to kind of create. It's felt like something I'm part of. So that's and it is really important. And I didn't talk much about our leadership board, but to kind of oversee the delivery of the devolution deal and bring together kind of the rural equivalent of a combined authority. We've got those And you get a different conversation, don't you, when it is the non-executive and political leaders of a range of partners and organisations around the table. The other thing I would say is that because Cornwall is remote, doesn't have neighbours, it's the fact that we are all dependent upon the environment and the economy for our health and well-being, and those things are all interconnected. And in Cornwall, that interdependence is really, really visible and apparent and felt because of the nature of our geography and our place. So you have a lot of those leadership conversations are always focused on the integration of the whole. There's a question around sustainable development goals. We've actually embedded those within our decision-making processes as a council. We have, as part of our commitment to be carbon neutral by 2030, which the question was, that was actually in response to community engagement. It was community bottom up, came through local community first, and then was endorsed by full council. The decision wheel is about helping us to live that and our social justice commitments. Every decision is evaluated for basically against a kind of donor economics model. So I'd say there's just felt like there's that really strong leadership from the beginning. I'll have to talk to Sean about what his experience was before. But those ingredients are important, and I do think there's probably also an aspect where, as the challenges are greater, it forces places to think about these solutions. Austerity has been tough. There's been tough economic times. We're going through some quite tough times at the moment, and it forces that real coming together around some of those solutions that will help people have better paid jobs and a better quality of life and sustain our environment for future generations.
Fantastic, thanks for that. Deborah, do you want to reflect on that question about how it started and what, if anything, has changed in recent months?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky I had the benefit of a couple of minutes there to think of the answer while Jessie was talking. I hope it's worth it. And I've jotted down 3 or 4 things very quickly to say. First of all, we need to use a crisis. If you have a crisis, you use it to try and bring around change. And that's exactly what we did. Our leaders in the city got together and started to realise that if ever we're going to get movement and change, it's now in a crisis. The second thing to mention is it's good to prove, especially to our politicians, if you want them to invest in what you're doing, in resource and with money, and to get behind you, you have to prove that these things work. So pulling on examples globally and in other cities, but also proving locally that you can make these things work. And that's the one thing that we did with several projects with the Future Cities Catapult, in particular our rates maximisation project, which started to bring in millions of extra commercial rates once we adopted that particular product. And the third thing then I would say is that you need to focus by developing a good story around missions and understanding what it is you're trying to coalesce around. And then fourthly, I suppose, just get on and deliver, just do what you say that you're going to do. I'm going to add just at the end as well that we realised that we had, it was the council pushing a lot of this, and we didn't have the industry experience that's needed to push a triple helix programme. And we have now brought on board a digital innovation commissioner, and I hope you have her at one of your future third Thursdays. And she's fantastic, but she's great in industry experience. So somebody that can speak across government levels, can talk passionately to the politicians, can tell that good story, can sum these things up and bring them on board with the enthusiasm and get them to see the vision is really important.
Jessie, Deborah, thank you very much. Incredibly helpful and insightful listening to you. I'm sorry to those in the chat we didn't get through every question, but hopefully we've given a flavour of all of them. Leanne, do you want to throw up the final slide and we'll do a bit of sort of looking ahead. As I said at the beginning, levelling up is one of the big main stories that we are engaged in. We believe that connected places, approaches and technologies are going to be really critical to helping places understand their assets, align ecosystems, and enable that infrastructure for success. So as well as this, there's the podcast series I mentioned at the beginning. There's an episode specifically on innovation economies. So we'll send links to that following this. We've just published a piece on a sort of long view of the rise and fall and rise of Birmingham, and what happened to enable levelling up, and then sort of douse the engines of Birmingham's success and how it's restarted the economy in the last few years. And there's more webinars coming. There'll be a future third Thursday in which we will share some research that we're doing right now, understanding the academic research strengths across the country and trying to find some hidden gems and unsung heroes that we can help, and likewise thinking about what we do, what we make available from our own knowledge base and staff team to help more places to take advantage of the current opportunity to level up and stay ahead. So I hope to see you at one of those in the future. Further information will come after the fact. Please do fill in the feedback survey and help us think about how to improve these sessions in the future. We're really aware that there's many Zoom webinars and the like you can join, and we want to make sure that what we're doing is useful and impactful. So please be candid and honest and profuse in your feedback to us. I'll draw the line there. Thanks once again to Jessie and Deborah, and we'll look forward to seeing you again sometime in the future. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.